So yes, today we have a couple great presenters talking about student resources, student classroom situations, and maybe overall big picture view of what students are going through. And then on Thursday, we have a great panel of actual students to give their perspective. And Marcia is going to come back on Thursday to host that panel. So let's turn to Sandy to start us off. Oh,
okay. So thank you very much. I am representing the behavioral response team. We had wanted to have Martin Pino, who's head of counseling and wellness, to come and talk, but at this time of the year, there are lots of different training programs that go on for people that are in student affairs and who sit on any sort of panels or special things like that. And so he's tied up today. I've been on the behavioral response team as a faculty member for a large number of years, just about as long as it's been in service here. And we meet once a week to talk about students. So first of all, the behavioral response team is made up of people from student affairs, public safety, and we have a faculty rep. So Leslie Adder, Colleen Barry, Martin Pino, and Charmaine Ahmed are members from student affairs. Joe Fulch, who's head of public safety, is a member. And what we do is to deal with any issues that arise that have to do with students and their well-being. And it might be that the student has financial issues and the faculty member has reported them to us and we forward them to send them to the right place. It might be a student with housing issues that gets forwarded to us. So it's any student with a problem. The other group that gets forwarded to us are students who are having trouble following whatever the classroom rules are or protocol, or a student who hasn't been attending and seems to be having a problem. So the kinds of things that we deal with are varied. They're different every week. And for example, since last Monday, so beginning on last Tuesday, we had 13 referrals. So 13 people were sent to us. Those kinds of referrals had to do with everything from a student who, with some gender issues, who had gone in and talked to a staff member, a student who wouldn't wear a mask, a student who said that she's got a money problem, a student who, two situations where somebody was being harassed, 3 people who reported mental issues, 1 student reported himself with a mental issue, a domestic violence, a faculty member that reported that a student was very aggressive, a student that was self-harming. There are various things that come to us. Some of them are very urgent and require immediate attention. That's one of the reasons that the head of public safety is involved. There are times in the middle of the night when public safety and our student affairs people are involved in getting help for someone who is in some crisis. So this is a very serious group. What also happens though is there are things that happen in class that don't seem to be appropriate. And at times faculty might be hesitant to report them, but what we see on our side is that many times the same person that one faculty member doesn't want to report because they don't want to get the student in trouble, the student is having problems in another classroom or might be having an almost total like mental meltdown someplace else. So all of the little things that don't seem important very often are important, because I don't know, there was a story about three blind men and an elephant, and touching a part of the elephant and you don't necessarily see what the rest of it is. This is similar. You see a little piece of what's going on with the student, but often the problems are much deeper. Sometimes faculty don't quite understand what our authority is. So let me tell you that if you report a person, or if you want to send one of your students to counseling and wellness, you can suggest that to the student, but there is no way that you can compel a student to go. And counseling and wellness cannot reach out and say, you've been referred to us and we would like for you to come see us. However, if you refer that same person to the BRT, someone will call and say, we're worried about you. We know that you've been having some problems and we want to talk to you and tell you what things are available for you and why you might want to consider going to those resources. So there is a connection that's made between the person that is referred and then the person who does the referring gets information back from the BRT. Whereas if you refer somebody to counseling and wellness, they are not going to reach out and tell you what was discussed, and because they cannot. And the BRT can tell you what conversation they had with the student, and they can say that they referred them to counseling and wellness and that the student was interested in or would consider it. So you know that you know some pieces of what's been done. Just to let you know, this group has been involved with students like this, for, like I said, a number of years, but definitely during the pandemic, there were things that went on that were very helpful to students. First of all, counseling and wellness went online. So they were doing both online and at that point, they could not do personal contacts, but they could do them online. We still met every week. We had lots of referrals on lots of different things during that time. It seems like the job has become much more critical in the past year and a half. I think students have become much more stressed. And so we're seeing examples of that. And it's very difficult sometimes for students to deal with the isolation and all that. So we're seeing more and more of them that, like I said, are acting out or having problems. But one of the things that we cannot do is throw somebody out of a class. So there are lots of times that someone will wait until things are very tense in the class and they don't necessarily deal with them up front, and then they want the student out. There are processes for that. There are some legal ways that a person can be removed, but the very first thing that needs to happen is the student needs to be told that their behavior is not appropriate and that whatever they're doing in class cannot be repeated, and that warning needs to go out. People do need to be contacted. The student will be contacted. They will not be able to stay in the class and keep doing whatever the behavior is, but to remove them completely takes some time, and there are lots of hurdles with that. So the important thing is to catch things early on so that the student can get help before they've gotten themselves into a situation where there is a lot of bad interaction between them and the teacher. And everyone should remember that the students are not in trouble when they come to us. They may be having trouble with something, but they are not in trouble. There's nothing that goes on their record that says they're in trouble. The time that we can help them is early on. Later, if they repeat their behavior, there are processes, including conduct issues that can go on. but that's later. We try to fix these things early. So BRT can come talk to your departments at any time and tell you what they do, and you can meet all of the people involved in it. They're really great to work with. I will say I love working with this committee. At some point I am going to retire, so if any of you are interested in working with this committee after I retire, you should let me know that you're interested, and I will make sure that they've got your name. I'm not leaving today, but it's not going to be forever. I think unless you've got questions, that's what I have to say. We're a good group. We love the students. We try to help them. And we're on your side that you need a way of teaching and being in your class and having it move smoothly without interruptions. So that's part of what we're trying to do here. So thanks, Lisa and Paul, for your chats.
Thanks, Sandy. Obviously, we appreciate everything you do, and the college won't function if you retire, so that's not an option. Sandy has to run to another committee because she's
have to run to another committee. So if there are any questions, I'll answer them now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't raise my hand. It's Roberta.
Hi, Roberta.
Hi, Sandy. I've used your services more than once. I would just like to suggest, it's not a question, a suggestion, that you make more people on faculty and staff aware of your existence. I have a different chair now, but when I had the first problem, the chair never mentioned that I could go to you. And I suspect there are a lot of adjuncts in a similar situation who are not aware.
So just for you to know, in some departments, at mine, for one, we actually have had the BRT come to our faculty development at the beginning of the year. So our faculty are well aware of it. And yes, you're right. The more the faculty know about it, the more referrals we get. And it's very important that adjunct faculty know, because sometimes they're here by themselves at night, or they feel by themselves and something happens. And if they don't know where to go, it can make teaching very difficult. And so, like I said, our BRT is happy to give presentations. They send letters out to your chairs at the beginning of each semester and offer their services. And they have been doing more and more of these. So if you want to recommend to your chair that they come talk to you, that would be great.
Unfortunately, well, each department is different, but unfortunately in my department, adjuncts are not invited to meetings. That's why I'm suggesting that you find some way, if possible, of publicizing your existence
To the adjuncts.
to all faculty and staff.
Thank you very much. That's a good suggestion. Okay, I'm going to undergraduate course of study.
what?
Bye.
Oh, for some reason, can you hear me? Oh, okay, my computer's, we're having some serious audio problems. Julie is listening to us or reading the transcript. So just again, a reminder, I'm not taking over, but my audio just went out for a second. So I think if you can hear me, we're going to move on. Thank you again, Sandy, to Carolyn Gelman from the program, the Master of Social Work program and School of Social Work to go next. And hopefully somebody can host this if I go disappear in a second too. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Thank you, Paul. So many of the things that Sandy talked about, we deal with internally at Silberman School of Social Work, because of course we have so many social workers on faculty and staff. But one of the first things I wanted to say is that the way that we thought about COVID was not just as a pandemic, but really as a syndemic, because of all the disparities and inequities that the pandemic of COVID uncovered, which is what our profession has been aware of and trying to address for its 100-year existence. So really what we saw was this intersection of the COVID with the racism and its manifestation and the health disparities and the discrimination. And given who our students are, very large numbers of students of color, first generation college graduates who are now the first in their families to be in a master's program, the impact was really significant. What we saw was a lot of mental health issues, including anxiety, significant depression, an increase in reporting of domestic violence because of the having to be at home under very stressful conditions, some substance abuse occurring literally on camera. So faculty reporting to us that they're seeing students who seem impaired on camera. And then the disparities of who had technology when we pivoted online, who could actually be on camera and learning, the impact that many of our students who are older, of course, and have families and are working part-time. So really the stressors of trying to balance all of that. The other thing I think is really important to talk about is that there was a parallel happening with our staff and our faculty and our adjuncts, right? So we were all experiencing this endemic. Some of us had much greater impact than others. And so as the director of the Master's in Social Work program, we really wanted to have supports in place, not just for our students, but for our faculty and staff as well. And so the levels of supports that we instituted were at 3 levels. So we had access to what CUNY provided. We had access to everything that Hunter College was providing, including the BRT when needed. And then we had supports internal to Silberman. So much of what was needed were concrete pragmatic supports, including financial assistance and access to technology, and not just the equipment, but training and how to use it and how to, become proficient in Zoom and how to be able to upload your materials and all of that. We really ramped up the supportive counseling that we were offering through our student services department, and a lot of resources and referrals. Again, we're very lucky that our staff are professional social workers and know where to access information. But one of the things I'll do when I'm not speaking is put into the chat 2 really excellent search engines that will find you resources by the need and by zip code. And so that anyone, even somebody who's not a professional social worker, can at least locate potential services for students that way. So I'll do that when I'm not speaking. One of the ways that we tried to be supportive of our students also was in training the faculty around, understanding the impact of what was happening to our students and modifying academically what was happening, right? So that not to water down the quality of the training, but to really talk about, bring it in, the parallel process of, if you as a student are experiencing all these stressors, what can we do in the classroom to make it so that you can still be successful and still feel competent and confident, but not have the burden, right? And then talk about it in the sense of, that's what a social worker does with their client. So using it as a parallel process. And we were facilitating those conversations and helping students take leaves of absence, for example, if necessary, or passing to a reduced course load and regrading their process through the program. Lots of conversations with instructors to help them think about how to do that balance of ensuring the quality and the learning while being, kind to students under these really complex circumstances. And that's really the fourth thing that I wanted to talk about, was how several of us have been thinking about how relevant what has been happening for us is to social work education, both in process and in content, and in really thinking about how we modify the content of what's taught in social work and the way that it's taught to a much more trauma-informed way, given the impact of this endemic on our students and on the clients that we are training them to serve. So things have been happening at the School of Social Work on these multiple levels. And two colleagues and I are actually writing a paper that I'll be happy to share with you once we have at least a good draft about how we, learn crisis as opportunity, right? And how we learn and how we grow from this experience and ensure that we're better prepared to support our students, because as we have heard from all the scientific experts, that these kinds of situations will happen more and more. We're not making the kind of progress that we need to be making in the social disparities and racism and social justice arenas. And so we really need to think about mid and long-term how we harness what we've learned in the last 18 months to build a better school and a better program and better prepare our students to go out into the world as professional social workers. So that's a brief overview of what we're doing in social work.
I can't. I can't. Can you see me? No.
The technology is doing battle with you, Paul.
Yeah, I can't do anything. It's stuck. We can go to the next. Go to the next.
Hi.
Yes. Go next. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Michelle Lask. I'm the fieldwork coordinator for the counseling program, the school counseling track, mental health track, and rehab counseling track. So I just want to really reinforce everything that was already said, because we at the counseling program have really addressed the issues systemically and also the disparity issues. And also we've used the BRT and certainly focusing on the parallel process as we work with our students as well. So what I would like to add, if you will, is really, Caroline referred to this, just the disparity, and that so many of our students are first generation, and that how I think what can be useful to our students is to help our students decrease possible shame around experiencing issues of intense anxiety and depression, and all the increased substance use issues, domestic violence, all of the increased mental health concerns and physical abuse concerns that have really presented over the last year and a half. And so, we have really seen, a real trajectory, a real developmental process, if you will, during the pandemic, in the sense that spring 2020, there was a real sense of, for most people, we're in this together. And there was a camaraderie, if you will, that people certainly felt, I think, more comfortable with, and maybe that's an exaggeration, of sharing their concerns, their fears. And over time, as the impetus has been to reintegrate, transition back, normalize, or create a new normal, we've seen an increase in a sense of isolation, if you will, that people are feeling, I'm not over it yet, or there's a real pressure or burden to feel like, okay, let's get back to normal. And so in a different way, helping students, and faculty and adjuncts embrace where they are and understand that this is part of the process, and to really be able to ask for help with without shame. And that, so many of our, of our students, being first generation, that, using counseling does not mean that there's a problem or that you're sick, and that, to really help the students kind of expand their perspective of using counseling, and sooner than later in service to de-escalation. And so oftentimes that the more intense services need to be utilized because things weren't addressed soon enough, and really could have been much more manageable to the classroom, and to the students. And so when noticing when a student is experiencing anxiety, depression, discomfort, to really notice them, as counselors, what are we? We're professional noticers. And so, sometimes, and when we teach it, what we teach in the counseling program is that you're not outing or you're not embarrassing, but you're inviting people in, and you're noticing, like, oh, I'm a little concerned. What's going on? Let's talk about it. And so to help the student have a safe space to talk about what might be going on for them. And then we certainly encourage students to, we're providing the information and to utilize the counseling and wellness services, which are time limited and wonderful. And as I said before, because they're now online, more easily accessible, to most. However, as what we've noticed in the pandemic, again, in terms of disparity, is that so often people come to counseling because the stressor is within the home. And so with everyone being at home, people actually couldn't access counseling because they didn't have privacy. And so we always want to recommend that anyone's catchment area, a major medical center, Sinai, Cornell, and in this great city, we have access to wonderful treatment. Anyone's catchment area can offer counseling and psychological services where they live, and usually is covered by insurance. And if insurance is an issue, then there are certainly many community-based mental health counseling community-based clinics in the area, which certainly are fee-for-service or and sliding scale, and they'll really work with the student. And I imagine this is on Caroline's referral source. But again, we really want to always normalize and provide the information. And although we're not in the service of connecting students to services, that's not our role. But we certainly want to make it as accessible and comfortable and easy for the student to access. In a way that's not, again, normalizing and not shame-inducing. In terms of, something more basic, we talk so much about this in the clinical courses, the field, the practicum and internship, and the foundation, the foundational courses as well, that self-care, as we are preparing counselors, similar to a parallel process, we can be much more genuine and authentic. We actually practice self-care ourselves, and I will say a version, hopefully a little more delicately than I'm going to say now, but that counseling is kind of weird if you've never been in counseling yourself, and so we're always encouraging, and we can't require students to be in counseling, but we're absolutely always encouraging our students to be in personal counseling for their professional and personal development. And of course, providing resource, and we'll always start with Hunter Counseling and Wellness as a first opportunity. But helping the students engage in self-care. So again, whatever they enjoy doing, to try and fit that in as much as possible throughout the day, between sessions, between classes. It always amazes me how many things our students do, how many roles our students play. Students are students, that's they're one of their roles are students. They're caregivers, they're caretakers, they work full-time, they work part-time, they're in field work. And so for them to be able to manage all of their roles and to, really take a break, to be able to kind of switch gears, to kind of prepare for the transition as they move on throughout their day, and help them acclimate to their next role is so important. And so, to really help them practice self-care. And students will always ask me, for ideas, and we'll make suggestions, but I'm always like, it's such a personal list. Like, what works for me doesn't work for you. And again, in service to normalizing and kind of like, it's all good. Like, if it works for you, that's great. Do it for 5 minutes. But it really, we always want to, again, normalize, minimize shame, kind of lean into the anxiety. And so oftentimes I will start off the any orientation meeting or my class just to say, it's completely natural to be nervous. And so that's not to increase your nervous, but to kind of like expect you're going to be nervous and kind of let it go. Expect that, in the as you're transitioning into a new class, a new environment, what have you, that you might not sleep so well for the first couple of days, first couple of weeks. That's okay. You'll sleep later. And sometimes by saying it out loud, it really helps the student just be like, that's okay. Oh, I'm not crazy, kind of thing. And so, as it was said before, to really use the classroom to say out loud things that really students might not feel comfortable saying in other places, and to really provide that environment. And we always stress, as much as possible, peer support as well as any other support, that for students to connect with each other and connect with students that are going through similar experience is always so powerful, and helping people feel less isolated. So that's always useful. And last thing I also want to say is that students, again, are increasingly anxious and depressed, and certainly mental health issues are certainly increased. And to really begin to start talking more about like that it's time to leave the house. That students have certainly become much more anxious as they've been home and hunkering down for so long. Now, people in general have difficulty with transitions. And now we're seeing, again, as the expectation is to normalize and whatever the new normal means, but to really help students like embrace leaving and coming back and socializing in person with other people as much as possible as they feel comfortable, because that human connection is, Zoom is a wonderful opportunity in terms of access, but the human connection is really also so important. And that's, certainly based in research. And so to help people begin to take strides, to take steps towards, coming back in person, because that hopefully that will, decrease some of the anxiety eventually. And the last thing I just want to say is, again, people, really tend to have difficulty with change. People don't like change. People, and basically we're in a world where I will say, Monday no longer informs Tuesday. That basically every day is a new day. So, it's been wonderful practice for me, for students, but to really, help people begin to kind of feel less uncomfortable with, that we plan and then we see what happens. And we've certainly had so much experience with this, academically, systemically, culturally, racially. And so to really, as much as possible, kind of stay in the moment, and then, be flexible, permissive with each other and with ourselves. So that's really.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm just pitching in to help Paul and Julie because I think my sound works.
Okay.
That's the one criteria, I guess, to be a host. Michelle,
yeah,
you're just wonderful, and thank you so much. And it makes
I'll
me
start
think
crying now.
everything. Yeah, you and I usually cry. Everything that you said, I'm thinking about for faculty, of course, well-being too, so interconnected to our students. But before, please stay because we have another wonderful speaker. I think Paul introduced her already, but if you came in later, it's Dr. Marcia Liu. She's a licensed counseling psychologist, and she works as the Hunters Center for, and I'm going to probably, AANAPISI group.
How bad?
Where she works with mental health through HCAP. So I'm going to put a link to her bio and HCAP in the chat. And thank you so much, Marcia, for being here.
Oh, thank you for that introduction, Laura. I'm so happy to be here with you all. I have, I want to echo absolutely everything that Caroline, Michelle, and Sandy have already said. I think you all really teed up everything that there really is about creating mental health forward classrooms and knowing the way that we're trying to be really intentional about the spaces that we cultivate. I think that I'm here kind of representing HCAP and what we offer, as well as thinking about this from a classroom point of view in terms of pedagogy, no matter what your topic is, what your field is. This conversation really is about shifting, or I'm feeling like it's about shifting our roles as instructors from, kind of being a blank slate and being very, quote, objective and not having personal lives and just assessing, the success of our students based on, objective measures versus being a human being in front of them and allowing for their humanity to really thrive, for the goal for what success means being not just doing well in the class, but feeling comfortable, feeling like you're well, feeling like you're growing as a person. And these are like these kind of major philosophical questions about, what's our role in the classroom? I think a lot of times people might feel a bit allergic to bringing mental health into the classroom, being like, I'm not a social worker, I'm not a trained mental health therapist, I don't feel comfortable taking this on. And certainly so many of us are under multiple different stressors already, ourselves personally and professionally, that can feel like we all have our personal boundaries that we're trying to like enact for ourselves so that we can feel comfortable and like we're doing a good job ourselves. There are a couple of things that I wanted to suggest and love to hear from all of you, because I'm sure you're also bringing in various ways of destigmatizing mental health in your classroom. There are some small things like introducing what CW is on the syllabus or on the first day of class, asking students, like who, not have you been, but is anybody aware that this service exists? Do you know what they provide there? Or you presenting, actually they do provide, 3 to 8 sessions of therapy. What is therapy? 45 minutes where you talk with somebody who you're not related to and they're not grading you about what's going on for you. I think for a lot of students, they've felt like that is just such a luxury. There's no space for that in their life, and it just doesn't feel relevant to them doing well in your class. So it's really important, I think, just to try to change that messaging a bit and helping them understand that this is part of their role as becoming an adult or growing into their next identity as a Hunter student, is to become this full-fledged person. So that's one thing, just naming what CWS is. It's in Hunter East on the 12th floor, on the 11th floor. I think like just naming that it's here and helping them identify that is one thing. There's also about destigmatizing like that mental health isn't a luxury. I think stating this as a professor, noting with them that this is something that you encourage them to take advantage of, and not just on the first day of class, but during midterms, later on in this semester. This is we've been in this for so long, and acknowledging that this is weird. This has been weird for a long time. We're experiencing this transition just like they are. I think just can expand what's allowed in the classroom and expand their own kind of acceptance and understanding of their own stressors. It just normalizes it a bit. Some folks feel more comfortable and less comfortable with engaging even more, doing 5 minutes of journaling in the beginning of class. You know, just talk to yourself about your day. How are you feeling right now, physically, emotionally? How's it going for you in your life? What are you stressed about? You're not going to turn this in. Nobody's going to grade this. This is just saying that I'm going to devote 5 minutes to this at the beginning of the class. That might feel like kind of anathema depending on what your field is, but it doesn't have to be. You know, it could just be something that's normalized. It could be, if you're online, like drop in the chat one word that describes how you're feeling today. You know, we'll get into the rest of our class as well, but it's just saying like, I see you and I want there to be space for this in the room. Another thing is that it's really about questioning your own. Paul keeps going in and out. Questioning what your own boundaries are and what your own method for self-care is as an instructor. So these are about like really reflecting on like, how do I want to be in the classroom? So, how do I show empathy as a professor? How empathic do I feel today? Maybe not that much. Maybe I'm feeling stretched because there's a lot going on in my life too. That's great. I think part of it is just recognizing how that might be coming across to your students, how you might have varying levels of availability for different students on different days. This is just kind of getting to know yourself and knowing how you also bring in all of your stressors in the classroom. And I think fostering that awareness for yourself also kind of gives you a little bit more bandwidth to know, I just don't have it today. I'm really annoyed at all these things that have happened. I'll try better on Thursday, or I'll try to be more accessible on Thursday. That's okay. We're all in this too. We're participating in this pandemic as well. What's the other thing? The other part was about trying to find opportunities to foster belongingness in the classroom. I mean, it depends on how, again, comfortable you feel about this and what your field is, but almost every outcome for students improves when they feel more of a sense of belonging to the community that they're learning within. So that could be Hunter at large, that could be your own student, you know, your particular classroom. If there are ways to organize any kind of study groups, group projects, connecting students' experiences with each other, I mean, it's pretty much what we've known for a while, but I think speaking to Caroline and Michelle's points in particular, that there's been so much isolation, and particularly, I think for many students feeling hopeless and helpless and trapped within potentially not that healthy home environments, or feeling at least limited in that environment. I think we all have felt limited in our home environments after so many months. Trying to be intentional about finding ways to bridge students together for them to join. And it's probably going to feel, again, like it's a transition. They might be kind of out of practice. And I know the social anxiety for students is so much higher now because they haven't been just socializing with each other in person, especially. So just allowing for that to be a place where they can kind of grow back into that can be some great opportunity. Last thing I want to do is just give a shout out to HCAP. My role as the mental health specialist is to help refer students to CWS, as well as to refer students outside of CWS to particular community mental health agencies. Now, HCAP focuses on Asian American students in particular, and I'd be happy to talk with other students even outside of that demographic. But I think a lot of times students need to talk with somebody for like 20 minutes about just what will it mean? Am I ready to go to counseling? And we can provide that. We can provide that bridge. Sometimes it feels just too intimidating to go to a counselor. And for a lot of folks, that just feels like culturally just not sanctioned. And there just needs to be one kind of short conversation about how this is something that they can take advantage of, and that really it is a service for them. I think it's important for us to acknowledge, though, that Asian American students in particular are the least likely to go to a therapist of any racial demographic, for college students especially. And so even if we try to plug CWS as much as we can, some students are just never going to get there. And they will be much likelier to talk to you because this feels like a familiar relationship that they have had access to, which puts professors very much at the front lines a lot of the time for a lot of unloading or a lot of holding the stress. And I think that's also something that we're trying to think about, like, how do we as professors then draw that line for ourselves? And also, how can we feel not as helpless or hopeless in those positions too, or not as inundated? Because that can feel quite intimidating depending on, our differing comfort levels with that role. So that's a little bit from here. I'm also wanted to give a shout out to the faculty seminar series, which Paul and I are coordinating for this January. I wanted to encourage all of you to apply. We actually are focusing for this winter seminar series on student mental health, especially as professors who are struggling ourselves to keep it together as we are, having our own kind of personal and professional pressures on us at all times. So that's a 4-week seminar series that's paid, that is in January, and hopefully we'll see some of you there. But thank you for this opportunity to talk with you all.
Thank you so much. Each of you touched on amazingly so many facets of this issue that I thought, boy, if I was presenting, after Sandy or Caroline, or then, Michelle, Marcia, what else can we add? But you each added, really a lot of nuance. But that so many aspects that resonate, I think, for all of us. And we really thank you so much from ASSERT for taking the time to do this, because it's not only available for us here now, but obviously it's recorded, and Julie will get it up on our website. And so it'll be available for people from here on out. But I think it's such a great thing that you did this for our community. So we really thank you for that.